episode of Secret Invasion has dropped on Disney Plus, and thus far I haven't put out a video sharing my full thoughts on the series, so I thought might as well do that today. Let me know what you thought about Secret Invasion thus far down below in the comments section. And this will be spoiler based, so if you haven't seen the episodes yet, go watch the episodes, then come over here and join the conversation about Secret Invasion. So I actually watched the first 2 episodes of the show about a week before episode 1 debuted. They gave critics 2 episodes early on and did put out a short with my initial thoughts. And kind of essentially, I feel the same way about it after episode 3 as I did when I put out my initial short discussing, which is I like the more serious tone, that it's not jokey, that it's not relying on a bunch of action and spectacle, that it's an actual thriller about these global threats where you don't know who you can trust. You don't know who's going to end up being a Skrull. There's a lot of different factions with influence in different sorts of places. Right out of the gate in the first episode, they make it clear that the show's not messing around. They have an event where someone we care about is killed, as well as thousands of faceless people are killed. So there's scope to that, as well as a personal connection to it, which makes you really want to see the bad guys defeated. You believe them when they say we're looking to start World War III. They pose a meaningful threat. Those are all good things. And then in the second episode, I thought it, I don't know, maybe felt like our energy was kind of getting maybe spread out a little bit of, okay, you ended with a great cliffhanger over there. And I don't know that it necessarily had the flow for even trying to think, I only watched it one time. What exactly did happen in episode 2? I remember episode 1 really well. I remember the cliffhanger of episode 2, but it felt like it didn't. And I remember the conversation with Rhodey, but the actual plot of it didn't feel like it picked up the stakes and the energy to kind of move that forward. And so typically speaking, I think a lot of these Disney Plus Marvel shows start off with an interesting concept, some fresh new spin on MCU that it's like, oh, that's kind of cool and interesting. And then it feels like it loses steam and momentum in the middle or goes down rabbit trails. The pacing gets way off. And then we rush to a finale that feels kind of generic. And by the end of it, it's like, okay, that wasn't as good as it felt like it was going to be at the beginning. And that's been my fear with this show, that it would be another one where it's like, oh, cool. We're not doing another Marvel comedy. We're doing something that is a thriller, pulling in paranoid thrillers, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that sort of thing into the mix. We're letting our 2 leads be a guy in his mid-50s and a guy in his 70s. Those are our leads and it's about their relationship that goes back years. It's more mature. Cool. But are we going to be able to keep that up and sustain that? Is it going to dwindle and lose momentum once again? Or is it going to properly build up to a big finale? Which I guess we'll find out. So for episode 3, I think what it very much solidified is that this show is about this relationship between Fury and Talos. That's what this show really is. And it's in the genre of paranoia thriller. The conflict is about the Skrulls, their invasion. But what is this really about? It's about these 2 guys and how the events of Captain Marvel, that friendship that was formed, that's why Nick Fury became Nick Fury. But even though they have this friend-working relationship going back a long ways, there's also many ways in which they don't trust each other. They're working against each other, and it's a very complicated relationship. And that's interesting. There's something about that when Nick Fury's realizing just how many Skrull are on the Earth, and he's just shocked at what's going on. That's fascinating. But then you're also learning of all the ways in which Nick Fury hasn't really fully owned the fact that he kind of took advantage of the Skrull and their skill set, their powers serves him. He's kind of taken advantage of that and hasn't paid some things off that he said that he was going to pay off. There was supposed to be this two sides to this, and it hasn't happened. And so there's some interesting dynamics in all of it, and complicating. At the same time, I don't feel like it fully is kicked into high gear. I don't know how to phrase it exactly. Like, we know our villain is a big threat. We understand kind of the conflict of why he's doesn't trust humans and Fury and has a vendetta, but not fully. Not to the level of like, yeah, I'm going to kill all the humans. There's like a big gap there of, okay, Fury made promises he didn't keep them, and we still don't have a home. Okay, that's a legitimate issue. I'm not fully grasping the jump from that to a whole large group of Skrull want to blow up the Earth. Feels like there's a gap there. That's not, the scope of their threat does not match the wound that leads to their motivation. So some of that's kind of, okay, like I think I need a little bit more there to fill that in. And if there's some parts that have felt a little bit like they're, I don't know, like just doing like they almost want to go all in on, let's do a more mature show starring two dudes over their 50s in a genre that doesn't necessarily immediately appeal to the broadest and youngest demographics or anything like that. And then at the same time, it feels like they kind of dumbed some stuff down at times or simplified it to make it a little bit more accessible. It almost feels like a compromise. Like, let's do something big, bold, and different, but compromise at it, which I think kind of common in these Disney Plus shows of they half commit to this fresh new thing and then not fully commit to it. And so it just kind of becomes like the mediocre middle. And I'm afraid that's what this is going to be again. By the time we get to the end of it, it just kind of is in the mediocre middle rather than actually embracing paranoia thriller designed for an older demographic. Another thought that's kind of been going through my mind, Secret Invasion has not had the best ratings. I believe it's second lowest, with only Ms. Marvel having lower ratings. And that's like, Ms. Marvel's a brand new character to the MCU. And then in terms of even Marvel Comics as a whole, she's not a character in this present form as she was adapted, with his long legacy, hasn't been adapted a bunch of times before. So newer character to the mainstream. Versus Secret Invasion, Nick Fury. Nick Fury, been around a long time. And obviously, even in the MCU, Nick Fury goes all the way back to the beginning in a post-credit scene in Iron Man, starring, our Kamala Khan actress, I'm blanking on her name, but that's the only thing I've ever seen her in. She kind of like cast to be this character that's not an A-lister, and she's not an A-lister. Whereas Nick Fury, I don't know that you'd say he's an A-list character, but he's been in a lot of A-list movies starring Samuel L. Jackson, who is one of these just names that everybody knows because he's been around forever, and he's a Jedi, and he's in Die Hard, and he's in Pulp Fiction, and he's in, of course, MCU, and 1 zillion other things. Everybody knows who he is. And so the fact that show starring him is just above this one over here makes you like, what's kind of going on here? Is it like dwindling interest in Marvel Disney Plus shows? Was it the wrong genre? What exactly is kind of going on here? And it's had me thinking a lot about kind of the Disney Plus strategy and where I think it's starting to have its issues and things like that. And I think one thing that's a big problem with the Disney Plus strategy that's kind of made a lot of people just kind of like, I'm just throwing in the towel on this, is that they're both putting out projects that are targeting more narrow audiences while also having these TV shows feed into movies in very dramatic ways. So you have, Ms. Marvel, it's a much more younger demographic. And then you have Secret Invasion, stars a man in his 70s, co-leads with a guy in his mid-50s that very much looks like a guy in his mid-50s, and it's not humor. And then you have She-Hulk, that's a legal comedy about a lady's love life. Like, these are playing to such very different audiences, but then you have movies that are sequels to TV shows. Later this year, The Marvels comes out, and it's a sequel to Captain Marvel, spin-off of WandaVision, and sequel to Miss Marvel. And so you want this big, broad, accessible movie that's also a sequel to a show that was only watched by a niche audience and was kind of made more for a niche audience. Not designed the way that an Avengers movie is made to be, like this. Everybody can watch it. And then these shows are not really designed that way. Like, I don't expect my kids to watch Secret Invasion and be like, this is a really cool, interesting look into the complex relationship of grown men that have been working together for a long time. That, my kids don't care about that at all. It doesn't mean anything to them. So it's like a project that inherently won't appeal to a certain batch of people that otherwise watch Marvel movies. And that seems to be the case with a lot of these Disney Plus shows. And that strategy doesn't work if you're also having the movies be sequels to these projects. And then likewise, Secret Invasion is very much a follow-up to Captain Marvel, but it's not designed for the same audience as Captain Marvel. So Captain Marvel, very lighthearted, a lot of comedy. And even though it's dealing with these refugees that are being killed off and hunted down, it's very jokey, laugh a minute type of film with, fight scenes. All of a sudden, No Doubt is playing. It's that movie. And then this is very much not that. Even just the lead character being 30-year-old woman, 70-year-old man. Of just the inherent people drawn to the project, very different, but it's a follow-up to it. So I wonder how much that just kind of like makes it, this project falls into this weird kind of limbo of the people that this project would most appeal to in a broad sense probably aren't the people that have Captain Marvel in their top 10 Marvel or MCU films. I don't know, but it's fascinating that it's kind of how poorly it's performing and what exactly that is. But I have a lot of concerns about the strategy that Disney's been using with Disney Plus and Marvel, with the way the shows are being done and making them sequels to things. And I think it's going to shoot them in the foot. Guardians 3 did great, but that's because it had nothing to do in a meaningful way with Disney Plus. There was a holiday special you could watch that'll tell you like a couple of important plot points. It's a ton of fun. I loved it. But if you didn't watch the holiday special, they tell you in the first 10 minutes of Guardians 3 the important reveal. There you're fine if you missed it. Versus if you didn't see WandaVision and you went into Doctor Strange 2, you're probably pretty baffled. And I don't know how the Marvels will work for people that didn't watch Miss Marvel. I don't know how they're going to... it's like a whole origin story about powers, a dynamic with her parents, all this stuff. And if you have to reintroduce all of that while establishing the main conflict and the relationships with each others, I don't know how that'll work. But anyway, I'm rabbit trailing just a little bit, but I don't know. Maybe it's that I just don't have specific deep thoughts on these episodes of Secret Invasion. I have broad thoughts on Disney Plus and the show as a whole, but like walking through the plot beats isn't quite as interesting to me at this particular moment in my life. So anyway, make of all of that what you will. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.